So the most interesting thing about James Brooke is a lot of people look back at James Brooke from what he managed to accomplish. What he accomplished had nothing to do with why he was in Sarawak in the beginning.
Oh,
So he originally was just he was actually planning to do a trip around the world, and then he just kind of got drawn into the politics in Sarawak itself. Well, one of the goals, he was also a patriot to England. So he was despite having an independent kingdom, he didn't really want to be an independent. He didn't want to be independent. He basically left England in late December 38. He landed in Singapore in about, I think, July 39. And this is when he actually hired 6 crew members from Singapore, Malacca area. And then they became probably the pilots for the local area. So we were just discussing it this morning. There's a little bit of interesting possibility. We don't know if he actually hired Malays or if he hired Orang Laut. The interesting thing about James Brooke is there's so many books written about him. There are many, many different versions of who
he was.
who's involved, what dates are involved. So a lot of what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to sort out all this stuff by going to the original material. And there's actually 2 different sources. One says Malays.
Mm-hmm.
I hired 6 Malays, and then another one says I hired 6 Orang Laut.
ooh.
So which one's which? We don't know. So he hired a guy called Thomas Williamson, and he became a very important member of James's early government. A government which doesn't exist yet because we haven't talked about it. But the bigger point is we all know that James was offered the government of Sarawak, and from this point on, he thought it was an instant possibility to take this offer now to England and say, okay, here's a new country that wants to join the empire.
Oh.
And to his surprise, he wasn't getting any response at all.
Oh.
So at this particular moment in time, Britain was not very interested in getting more colonies. So when you talk about the British Empire and colonialism, you have to understand that they go in waves. There's powers at the time that want to increase the empire. There are powers that don't care or want to even decrease the empire. This was all his own initiative.
It's kind of like an adventurer. He's going out,
Rediscovering lands.
he's paid for everything himself, and he's just gone on a wee adventure.
We adventure.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. And so one of his very first one of his missions was he was going to actually meet and form relations with the natives of Balambangan area, because his original thing was he was trying to investigate whether they could restart the colony at Balambangan, and because he was such a patriot to the English, he was actually in all his writings, when you read them, he's actually very anti-Dutch.
Oh.
So everything the Dutch did was wrong. It was horrible, terrible. So he was very pro-English that way. But he had no official position with the English government whatsoever. So it grows. So when he actually got the territory of Sarawak, the government of Sarawak, I should say, he immediately tries to offer it to England. And then, because he wants to become the official British governor of the colony of Sarawak. That was actually his original goal. But he wasn't getting any response at all, especially through his first business partner. Then he switches business partners. And so he switched from to a guy named Henry Wise.
Okay.
And this is the guy that is most responsible for the colony of Labuan existing. But nobody knows his name.
I don't.
Wise is lobbying behind the scenes politically to get the appointment.
Yeah.
And everybody sort of puts Brooke's name there as the person. It's actually Wise. He's back in England and he's doing the legwork.
The Labuan is actually a kind of a plan B for Brooke.
Oh.
When even after he gets Henry Wise involved, Henry Wise almost immediately gets a meeting with the Prime Minister. And just like that, just boom. because Henry Wise is tighter with the Robert Peel, who was the prime minister at the time. And he got the meeting, and then he said that he has a business partner who wants to has a territory that is ready to become a colony. And that's when Robert Peel decides to amend the orders given to Captain Belcher to investigate Sarawak along the way. Captain Belcher is Sir Edward Belcher, was actually initially tasked with mapping out the different ports. Basically, the Opium War had just finished. They had won access to Chinese ports. So what they needed to do was map out each port. So he was actually on an observation mission, being sent to the east. And then at the last minute, his orders are updated to say, hey, can you check out Sarawak first? With the intention of assessing whether it should be brought into the empire or not.
Whether it was viable or was it worth the effort to... So he stopped by Sarawak, States of Malacca, yes?
He stopped into Sarawak. They had a nice little tour of the area. And on the way out, that's when the ship ran into trouble.
Oh, shit.
You may have seen a famous picture. There's a ship that's half turned over like this.
Okay.
So basically, he got hung up on a rock in the Sarawak River. So let's just say he didn't have the best experience in Sarawak. So the report that he sends to England isn't really terribly favorable.
Yeah, understandable.
Yeah. And then on top of all this, there's a secondary diplomatic issue. And it goes back to the 1824 treaty, called the Treaty of London. And people know it here because it's especially in Malaysia, because it's the treaty that actually kind of swapped Bencoolen and Malacca back officially. So it kind of created a sphere of British government in the peninsula. And then everything south of the peninsula was a Dutch sphere. So there's a specific clause in the agreement that says all islands south of Singapore will become Dutch possessions. So when you draw that little line across from Singapore over to Borneo, you start to see that there's an issue, because Borneo is mostly south, but a little bit north.
Yes.
So does Sarawak officially count or not? So there's an interesting solution to that, is you just get the nearest island to Borneo that is north of Singapore, and that island is Labuan. But it's supported by Brooke and Wise themselves, because it's close to the administrative center of Brunei. The people have the wrong impression about Sarawak itself. It did not become an independent country when James got the government of Sarawak. He was granted the right to govern. He actually had to pay for the right to govern.
Oh, so he was paying the British government?
No. James Brooke was paying Brunei
to govern,
for the right to govern Sarawak. So it's almost like a franchise agreement. So he's running the Sarawak River territory for the British, for Brunei. Yes. The taxes that James Brooke collects. James Brooke isn't actually the tax collector at all. The tax collectors are the original Sarawak Datus. So they collect the tax, but then what they do is they bump up 50% to him.
Oh, wow.
So it's not the other way around where he collects and then passes them down.
They collect and pass it up.
They pass up to him, and then every year he has to pay a fee over to Brunei for the right to govern.
That's the original. That's how it started originally.
That's the original one. So this is from the famous date is the 24th September 1841.
Okay.
That's when he actually officially gets control of Sarawak.
Okay.
But it's no different from how it is today. Politics is the same. It isn't very much different. Just the era is different. Lawyers are involved. Treaties and agreements are involved. Compensation, payments, and so forth are involved. It's not much different.
What's taught in school is a very light version of it. Because the most shocking phrase that I've actually came across that describes this time period where James Brooke is not independent at all. He actually wrote to his business partner Henry Wise. Henry Wise. He actually literally said, "I rule Sarawak under the crown of Brunei. I do not wish to sport an independent monarchy." So he specifically says that he is a vassal state of Brunei. And this is after he has this is after he has in Sarawak itself. He was working with Raja Muda Hashim, who was the Bruneian prince, I guess.
Prince. Yeah.
Prince.
One of the princes.
He was a prince and the uncle of the Sultan. So he's a relative of the Sultan. And he was kind of shifted over to Sarawak, kind of to help control the rebellion that was happening at the time, but also to kind of get him out of the way diplomatically. Because there was he had diplomatic rivals in Brunei itself.
Oh.
He had ambitions to be Sultan
Yes.
of Brunei. And there were rivals that were also had ambitions to be Sultan of Brunei, the next Sultan of Brunei. So
Different family lines.
yeah.
So his competition in Brunei was a man called Pangeran Yusof. And what James Brooke did with Belcher later on, I guess we skipped ahead. So we go back. Edward Belcher, even with has a ship on the side like this. What happens is the British Navy hear that he's in trouble. They send a whole bunch of ships over to Sarawak to try to straighten the ship. And by the time the ships actually arrived, they had already righted the ship.
All right.
So at the same time that James Brooke is there in Sarawak with a fleet of vessels, he goes, "Hey, not a bad time to go pay a visit to Brunei." This is when you get back to gunboat diplomacy, let's say. When you have a fleet, you take advantage of the fleet. So this is when because there are actually several agreements with James Brooke and Brunei. So there's the original agreement 41, which is with Raja Muda Hashim in Sarawak itself, and then in 42, basically about 8 months later, he gets 12 months later, almost a year later, he's in Brunei. He gets the agreement ratified by the Sultan. So he has a preliminary agreement in Sarawak, and then he gets it completely ratified by the Sultan in August 42. And then Belcher arrived in about June 1843. And then the ship was finally righted in July. And so then he takes a visit back to Brunei in July of 1843. This is when he upgrades his agreement. So he uses this fleet of ships that he's
To get a better deal.
yeah, to get a better deal. So this is when he's turns the agreement. Pretty much the deal, the terms are almost identical. What happens is, and what confuses so many people is that he actually now gets the right to pass on Sarawak to his heirs.
Oh.
So if he pays a top-up fee of 4,000 Spanish dollars, he's allowed to pass on Sarawak to his heirs. And when he's writing to England, because there's a question of whether he owns the territory or he's a vassal. They don't know. England's confused as well. And to support his case of saying, hey, Sarawak's ready to be colonized, come, he's saying, Sarawak is mine in perpetuity.
Oh, wow.
Which is kind of the same phrase that people use when they get there are different rights that are given to people by Brunei. So there's Tulin rights. So Tulin rights are rights granted by the Sultan to typically a single individual, but then these land rights kind of pass down through a family.
Okay.
So the family itself inherits Tulin automatically like that. But for an interesting reason, there's a little top-up fee involved as one of the clauses in the agreement. So this is when Brooke, when Brooke is writing about himself in his letters, because I read his archives a lot, and I doubt everything I read, because I should. But so I double check. The only time I ever catch him kind of stretching the truth or being weird like this is when he's with business people. So I think it's like working with Henry Wise, and Henry Wise is coaching him
How to do the deals.
to say something like this. So this is when he expresses that it's a simple right of inheriting the government. It's not even inheriting the territory. So it's you're inheriting the right to rule a territory. You don't actually own the land.
You're just managing and running.
Yeah. So you're still paying Brunei every year a gift to the Sultan or taxes. So it's not really your territory, and so it couldn't be territory that could be given to England at the time. And so this is what hung up a lot of the problems. So they wanted so he stretches the truth with Henry Wise.
Okay.
Sarawak is mine in perpetuity, which is kind of true. So it's not quite his, and it's not quite perpetuity unless he pays.
Yeah.
So you have all these issues involved, and so Belcher was there to investigate these kind of agreements and things like this. So when he's there in Brunei with the fleet in '43, he gets upgraded agreement. At the same time, there's a talk about Labuan Island itself, and this is when they're kind of casually mention Labuan is open or for sale, or they're gently nudging, saying it's available. We can work out some terms. So this is when Labuan's kind of floated. So the very first time it's just mentioned into the Foreign Office knows about the island. Well, it's not the first time, is it?
No, it's not.
We keep forgetting about
No.
this.
But the EIC,
Yes, the EIC themselves, if we go back to Balambangan, everything's connected. So
I
Balambangan
learned that the hard way.
Labuan is known to some, but it's not known to the majority in office in government. They have no idea what is Labuan and where is it, what is its significance and stuff like that. So, but it is known to some officers in the EIC at that period of time. So,
and it was used as a little bit of a base for a while for the when they had the colony, the settlement, I guess would be a better word for it, in Balambangan. That settlement was attacked by, we don't know who.
and destroyed.
And destroyed.
Yeah. So they escaped to Labuan. Yeah.
Oh,
They escaped to Labuan, and so they actually occupied Labuan. The British occupied it for a little bit along 1775, I think it was.
okay.
And then even then, they tried working out a little bit of a trade deal, but the trade deal fell apart. So it was a pepper deal, right?
There's sort of a theory, and I talked about this with Chris. This whole idea of offering Labuan, and Brunei at that period of time was getting weaker and weaker, and then it was having a lot of problems with its neighbors. Whether or not Labuan was going to be some sort of a base that was being offered to the British, whether it was as a trading post or as a naval outpost, just as a sort of a little bit of protection at the entrance to the gate, having a British Royal Navy fleet there, would that have been a deterrence in protecting Kota Batu and Brunei itself? So that's something worth exploring, possibly.
Yes.
So this is part of the colonialism argument, I guess you should say. Or which topic are we on? Colonialism or Labuan? A little bit of both.
Labuan.
We can jump onto Labuan after this.
Yeah.
Well,
No, we're on colonialism.
yeah. Well, okay. Well, the interesting part is you have three major powers right in the area. You have Spain, Dutch, and
British.
So Brunei had a choice. They saw the writing on the wall. They know they're going to get walloped somewhere. So they're going to have to pick a side. The Raja Muda Hashim, his family was friendly to the British. So they were favoring British, but at the same time, he's in a diplomatic rivalry with Pangeran Yusof. And Pangeran Yusof, and then he's kind of friendly with Mahkota, and they're related as well. And Mahkota was more friendly with the Dutch in Sambas.
Who's Mahkota?
Indira Mahkota, okay. So Indira Mahkota Muhammad Saleh was the governor of Sarawak before the rebellion, basically. So he's the one who was, once antimony is known to be in Sarawak, and it's a commodity that is in demand in the West, it becomes a commodity that's shipped out of Sarawak to Singapore. So this is when Brunei hears about this new business venture. and this is when they come to Sarawak itself to kind of re-establish ties. They have growing and shrinking influence
Okay.
over the coastline.
Very similar to Sabah. Very similar to Sabah.
Same timeline?
That period of time, yeah, it shrinks, spreads. And then we have this issue of the Sulu influence on the east coast and the north. Again, Brunei influence comes and goes, and also depends on the Sultan who's in charge.
Because you have this whole system of alliances. So, like, if just like looking for a business opportunity, if I ally with the Sultan in this case, then I pay him a Kenaikan tax, which is the tax to be upgraded. Then he will put you in charge of a river, and then you might get Tulin rights, and maybe not.
Yeah.
So at the time, Makota himself, which is it's a title, but everyone calls him by his title, Indera Makota. So in the old books they call him Dura Makota or just Makota, and he's the one who was imposing a monopoly of trade on antimony in Sarawak itself, and caused the initial rebellion.
Everything leads, this greater question of how did Brooke suddenly get the ability to own a territory, rule a territory independently, without the British Crown, with the British Crown. It's an interesting, and you need to know from the beginning how it sort of gets to that point in time. Commodity becomes one of the vital things because it is an item to be exported. It is a produce to profit from, and you have to go back and look at it from the beginning. The way Chris has explained it is very, very important. So, but of course, there's political rivalry in Brunei. Sarawak is not an easy place to manage either, right, Chris? Yeah. All the rivers, all the different clans and tribes.
Yeah, the tribes especially.
Sarawak itself was kind of free from the influence of Sharifs at the time. Well, there were some Sharifs, but they weren't as powerful as the three big Sharifs which were ruling the next door river, Sadong and the Batang Lupar. Those Sharifs were quite strong, and because they were so strong, they were paying less and less tax to Brunei. So part of the whole process of Brooke getting friendly with Brunei was actually supporting Raja Muda Hashim, so making him more important in the Brunei court by increasing his control of the area.
Okay.
So you have to think of it. A lot of people think that James kind of lied his way in or conned his way in, double-crossed the Sultan. Nothing like that happened. He actually became pretty much a diplomatic, a political ally with Raja Muda Hashim. So if he could get Raja Muda Hashim more power, he would get more power. So this is the pattern which goes through those early first 5 years.
If you have tax officers that are collecting taxes from you from all the rivers, right, in Sarawak, and it's the same story in Sabah as well, not only in the west coast, but in the north and the east coast as well. If people stop sending you payments in taxes back home, or they start sending you a reduced amount, and they start keeping taxes for themselves, or they go into business themselves, which is what happens in Marudu with Sharif Osman. What happens to your treasury? You decline in coin and wealth. And how do you pay for an army? How do you sustain your kingdom? All these things will come back and hurt you. So whatever happens in Sarawak, a lot of the Brunei tax collectors are going and doing their own thing. They're not sending coins back. They're not sending taxes back, or jungle products that are received as taxes. They're not sending it back to Brunei. They're keeping it for themselves. And the Brunei Sultanate is sort of losing its grip on Sarawak. So all this happens sort of at a very crucial time, and Brooke turns up and his relationship with Raja Muda Hashim.
Yeah.
It's a very crucial time for Brunei. And one could argue Brunei goes through sort of several episodes of make or break. This is one of those make or break episodes. And it ends very cruelly, obviously, for Raja Muda Hashim.
Yeah. So the political rivalry gets very intense, because what happened is James Brooke uses Sir Edward Belcher, who had come the first time, made a negative report to England about Sarawak. And this is when Brooke forms Plan B. Plan B is Labuan. So this is when Henry Wise gets the idea of, if we sell Labuan as a colony, maybe eventually we can get influence over Brunei, influence over Sarawak. It'll spread, kind of like a contagion kind of thing.
Start from one spot.
Yes, exactly. So they locked in Labuan as a target because there was a resident councillor of Singapore, the original one, called John Crawford, and he's the one who takes credit for discovering antimony in the Singapore market. So he likes to say that he discovered it in the market and created the whole demand for antimony itself. But he actually was quite a writer and a diplomat himself, and so he presented himself as an expert in the area, and he's the one who reminded everybody about the 1824 treaty because he knows it really well. He's based in Singapore.
Yeah.
So he's the one who suggests, and he likes Singapore is an island, so it's defensible, and it's also Labuan is defensible as well as an island, and it passes the whole north of Singapore
Line
test.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he establishes that. So they eliminate this objection by choosing Labuan, and Henry Wise decides to try to sell Labuan. What is interesting is they know that some coal has been found in Brunei, and they found a tiny little bit in Labuan. They hadn't found the bigger seam yet. So coal wasn't the main reason they got Labuan, but coal was nearby. So they knew they could use Labuan as kind of a coaling station, is what he first recommends. He recommends that if we use Labuan as a coaling station, you could speed up the mail delivery from Singapore to China.
Wow.
So he was trying to he's trying to speed up the communication lines, or that was his argument. I don't. The reality was they could steam from Singapore to China direct without any stops.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a stretch, but he did pester Robert Peel quite a bit, the prime minister, and by this time Robert Peel was a bit weak in the government, and what happened was he said he wanted to avoid the issue. So this is when you have to come across the interesting part of British red tape in their government system.
Okay.
To understand colonialism, you have to understand three different groups of people vying for power in England itself. You have the Colonial Office, which is very obvious. They control colonies. But before something's a colony, you're talking about the Foreign Office. So Foreign Office are the ones dealing with all the diplomatic treaties and dealing with anything that's not a colony or part of Britain. And then you have the Enforcement Office, which is the Admiralty. So you have the Royal Navy, the Colonial Office, the Foreign Office. So if you can't convince one office, you can always knock on the next door. So this is what Henry Wise did. He knocked on the Admiralty door, and then he brings up their bane, and their mandate is to keep the oceans
Safe.
a blue ocean strategy, keep the ocean safe for trade to exist. Everything is to make trade work. So their mandate is to control piracy, and a very big center of piracy comes from the Sulu zone.
Yeah.
So Labuan is close to the Sulu zone. So I say close because at the same time, the Admiralty already knew it would be probably better to put a naval base at Balambangan Island because it's even closer.
Yeah. True.
Yeah, but Henry Wise they're all pushing for Labuan because it's closer to Brunei, closer to Sarawak. So this is where he convinces the Admiralty to then send a Navy representative to basically Sarawak first and then to Labuan. So this is when Brooke formally becomes part of the British government.
Oh.
So this is when he becomes an agent for the British Empire. So when Bethune arrives in Sarawak in February 1845, he receives a letter that makes him an agent to deal for the British Empire. So this is his beginnings of official connection to Britain. He didn't have any before this. Mm-hmm. So with the Royal Navy captain, Henry Wise tags along because he wants to jump in and help make the business deal. James Brooke himself wasn't interested in business at all. He was not interested in making money. He knew he was bad at it. because he had already tried a couple of trading ventures which he failed miserably. His father told him he'd failed miserably. He did fail miserably. So he's always been trying to prove himself as something else.
Yes.
So he thought he could prove himself as a governor, because governors technically at the time weren't allowed to trade at all.
Oh, okay.
So they were specifically, because of the way the East India Company had acted in India, there are very specific provisions to keep them from trading. So he thought he could keep a clean hand and become a noble governor.
Administrator.
Yeah, so just someone to be respected. That was his real goal.
By the 1800s, sort of the mid 1800s, if you EIC, the East India Company, is actually a really not a very popular word in England anymore, in London especially. It doesn't have a very good reputation either. So the British government was very reluctant to go down that path of the EIC again. They make one exception, reluctantly, but they do, and that's for Sabah.
Oh,
When Alfred Dent forms a company, buys over the rights from his business partner, Baron von Overbeck, and he decides we need the charter, we need to be recognized as a state, and we need the support of the crown, the British crown. So they go down that route. And if you look at the provisions and the conditions that the Colonial Office sort of list of do's and don'ts, the chartered company doesn't really have as much powers as they think they do. It's actually the British Crown that, that sort of controls, for the most part, North Borneo. But they don't intervene very much. It's very rare they intervene. It's the board of directors that actually have the powers and do run and rule North Borneo, Sabah. So, slightly different story for Sabah from Sarawak, how Brooke came into power and why. Very different ambitions, Chris, I think. Very different ambitions.
Because Sir Edward Belcher is kind of pivotal in the storyline himself for his initial negative report. But he's also gets back in touch with James Brooke a year later in 1844. And this is when James Brooke actually manages to convince Raja Muda Hashim that it's time for him to move himself back into the Bruneian court. So this is when there's a showdown between Raja Muda Hashim and his political rival Pangeran Yusof. So using Edward Belcher's ship, the HMS Samarang, this is when they actually relocate to Brunei in October 1844. So there's one famous picture, I'm sure you'll find it, inserted it at this time. It says Treaty of Labuan. The interesting thing is that this is 1844, not 1846. And signing of the treaty is what it says. People assume it's signing of the Treaty of Labuan, but it's not. It's actually it's signing the treaty, amity and friendship, Treaty of Amity and Friendship between Brunei and England.
oh, wow.
And it was because what had happened is he had his ship there. Frank Marriott has a very vivid description of what they're doing, and he's describing that he has the guns on his boat pointed at the audience hall just in case something breaks out, because you have Raja Muda Hashim facing off against Pangeran Yusof, and it's tension rising because we don't know if Yusof is going to bow down to the will of the Sultan or fight.
Yeah.
So at the time, they weren't sure if a fight was going to break out or not. So what happened is that Yusof did actually back down. And so then this is when Raja Muda Hashim is inserted as the Bendahara of Brunei, so replacing him. So he kind of deposed him with the help of a British naval ship.
All pointing guns at. Yeah.
And then as soon as he was in power, this is when he spontaneously offers Labuan again, like this time officially in writing, but kind of offering it on terms to be negotiated later. So this is why it's called the treaty, the signing of the treaty. So this is when they have something. England has something in writing, offering the possibility of Labuan.
So, Raja Muda Hashim, in the end, what happens to him? Yeah.
This is political rivalries often don't end well, and his was especially nasty. He actually does rise in power throughout 1845, thanks to James Brooke's cooperation with him and his fight against Sharif Osman at Marudu Mea. Sharif Osman himself was kind of allying with Pangeran Yusuf, and this allyship is what made him a very dangerous person to cross, and it gave him a lot of power in Sabah area. And what happened is, I guess we have to talk about it, don't we? Everything connects too.
Yeah.
So this is the Marudu story.
Which we'll touch on this weekend.
Yeah, but I have a larger Marudu narrative. I'll do the short Marudu narrative. So the short Marudu narrative is that you have Raja Muda Hashim, who badly needs to control, tamper, reduce the power of Pangeran Yusuf, and the easiest way to reduce his power is to split apart his supporting
Supporters,
allies. So this is when he comes up with the strategy. We don't know if it's real or not. This is when he officially complains to the British government that he's promised to suppress piracy, but at the same time he's not getting any support from Britain to help suppress piracy. And then this is when he officially writes and says that Sharif Osman has threatened to invade Brunei. And whether it's actually true, I don't know at all. What we don't know is if he actually threatened or not. What happened is Raja Muda Hashim wrote this letter, and then Brooke delivered this letter to the admiral in the area.
The British Navy. Yeah.
The admiral in the area was Thomas John Cochrane, and this is when he makes the decision to support the Brunei, the treaty. So his excuse for getting involved was it was supporting the treaty of amity and friendship that for an ally who was under threat from Sharif Osman. So that explains why he attacked there. But the reason why James was involved was he simply wanted Raja Muda Hashim to be the most powerful person. So it was, and at the same time, what most people don't know is after the Battle of Marudu, James Brooke lands back in Brunei. He instantly makes the deal of a lifetime, because it's literally called the lifetime fee for Sarawak. So up to this moment, he's been paying annual fee to govern Sarawak.
Yeah.
And what he did was he actually negotiated a lifetime fee. So one-time fee for the rest of his life.
Just a one-off payment.
Yeah. So he was paying, I think it was $2,500 every year. I'll have to double check that. Correct me here. Because he's paying different parties different amounts. Because he's paying one amount to Raja Muda Hashim, 3 different amounts to the Datus, and 1 amount to the Sultan. So when you add it all together, I think
It's a big sum.
I think it's $2,500. But the point is, he actually made an offer of $7,000 Spanish dollars for the lifetime fee to govern not just Sarawak River but other rivers as well. So he actually made this deal with Raja Muda Hashim that gave him control of many rivers, but the deal wasn't quite complete yet because he didn't have the cash on hand. So Brooke's plan was simply to go back to Sarawak, save up the money, and then on his return trip in 1846, he would pay the money, and then Sarawak would be his permanently. And he really could then sell it to England.
Yeah.
Raja Muda Hashim, after he reduced the power of Pangeran Yusuf by eliminating Sharif Osman, he became very weak. And what happened is the Sultan himself was convinced to name Raja Muda Hashim Sultan Muda, which just means he's going to become the next Sultan. Yeah. And at this time, he had enough power to actually banish Yusuf from Brunei.
Wow.
Yeah. And basically gets an order to kill Yusuf. And Yusuf tries to escape. He goes to Kemanas area, but he's caught around the Kimanis area and then executed. So Raja Muda Hashim is now on top. He had executed his rival. He's in power. James Brooke is happy. He's got his lifetime fee. Britain is happy because they upheld their deal and there's fewer pirates. The point is everyone's happy, but except for Pangeran Yusuf's family, obviously.
Yes.
So inside the family is where the disgruntled there's something brewing. Yes. So this is the part where it gets a little bit unclear in the books because Brooke is back in Sarawak. He doesn't have any clue or intelligence of what's happening in Brunei. So the last time he talks to Brunei, I think, is in October, November, 1845, and that's the last real contact he has until because every year there's a monsoon that sets in November. So travel between Sarawak and Brunei between November and March is very hard to do. And it's just customary to kind of lose contact. So he was in this kind of blackout period when the night of the long knives, right?
Yes. Yeah. The family get encircled in their home, entire family, and it's a very bloody event. Yeah.
So what happened is the Pangeran Yusuf faction had convinced the Sultan to declare an order to kill Raja Muda Hashim and family. So the Sultan kept switching sides.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the wisest decisions.
No, but he was known to be somebody who was very fickle-minded.
Yeah.
How old was he?
I don't know, because he took power 1832, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to tell with that because the British purposely write him to be the most outrageously silliest man on the planet, and you don't know if it's real or not real. They have a clear agenda of diminishing him as his power in any way possible, and Brooke wanted to do that as well because he literally wanted to swap in Raja Muda Hashim to become Sultan. So every time they write about the guy, they insult him every time. So maybe that can be restored. I don't know if there's other writings.
So Raja Muda Hashim is killed. A number of his family members also are killed. Brooke finds out, and Brooke comes back, but he doesn't come back alone.
Yes.
Does he?
So Thomas John Cochrane, who helped him out before the year earlier,
Takes his whole navy in again.
helps him out again. So this is now what is popularly known as the capture of Brunei.
Ooh.
So this is when the squadron comes to Brunei River itself, and then they start sailing. After the ships were brought in from China, from Singapore, from all sorts of different places. So they rendezvous outside the Muara in Brunei, and then they decide to come into Brunei itself. So at the time there was a lot of weird discussion because they typically, to take action what they were planning on doing, they needed a reason, or a casus belli, a reason for war. So the assassination of a foreign power that just signed an amity and friendship treaty is not quite enough cover.
Oh.
It's just friendship. It's not a guarantee. It's not like an ally.
Oh.
It's more like we plan on working together. It's not like a great guarantee.
Oh.
So they didn't have because when you're talking about all these diplomatic rivalries, you have the Dutch, the English, the British, and the Spanish, and they were checking what each other was doing. So if British broke international protocol, then the Dutch would have a reason to complain or a reason to have an upper hand in negotiating something else. So they were always very careful about not giving the upper hand to a foreign power.
That's true.
So weirdly, they wanted to take it over, but they had to make it look right. Yeah.
European powers are very, very scared of upsetting a rival or a neighbor unnecessarily because it could lead to war.
So they needed proof and a reason, a solid reason. So they actually later on Brooke and Cochrane write to each other and say, oh, we were kind of lucky they did that, because what happened is they came up the river in their ships, so they have the steamship in the lead, and then that's towing some more ships, and then boats as well, along with rocket launchers, all sorts of stuff. So they're definitely coming in to take over the place, but they don't actually shoot. The Brunei shoots first.
Oh, in defense.
Yes. Well,
Kind of.
obviously, kind of. You have a steamship coming up with an army.
Yeah.
They
Don't
had an
ask
opportunity
questions.
to shoot. So, but they used that shot as the casus belli. So they shot at us.
So, in defense.
That gives us the right to capture. So that's what they did. They had a quite easy attack in. Quite often there's a strong initial defense, and then there's a tactical retreat. Let's call it. So basically, Brunei was basically empty by this time. So they put up a front, and then they tuck into the jungle. So this is when they capture Brunei itself, and it's not when they actually take the Labuan though. That story takes a little bit more time to develop, because you have to remember you have these three departments, right? You have the Foreign Office, the Colonial Office, and the Admiral. So when Brooke is dealing with Thomas John Cochrane,
At the Admiral side?
we're dealing with the Admiralty, and the Admiralty is kind of a little bit cowboy. They have a little bit of leeway to do what they want, because they have to get stuff done.
Yeah.
Because right at this point, it could take 3 months to send a letter from here to England, and then they wait for the replies another
Then
3
that's
months
6
back.
Like half
So
a year.
literally 6 months later, you
Yeah.
get your yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. so they developed this whole system of literally, this is what I did, and then you would hear back 6 months later, I approve of your action, or we disapprove of your action.
But it's already been done.
Yes, but it already has been done. So weirdly, you have this situation where nobody knew about the capture of Brunei yet, and that happened in July. In June, back in England, is when the Peel government falls apart. The Peel government themselves the Colonial Office did not want to put a colony in Labuan, even though it was offered in 44. They just said no, make it just a naval base. So it might become a naval base, but even that was still in discussion, because they were deciding between Labuan and Balambangan. I'm going to be able to say that eventually. Balambangan?
Yes.
Man, I'm struggling with
That's correct.
colonialism.
Yeah. You got it.
Because you have to put the stress. I find that you put the stress on the second syllable.
Yes.
Balambangan.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So what happened is this decision is still active. There's no real decision to even put the naval base in Labuan yet. So weirdly, the conquering of the capture of Brunei is happening at the same time they're still deciding where to put the naval base. With this newfound power and control of Brunei, the Sultan has run off into the jungle for safety, and eventually is convinced to come back, because the British aren't there for conquest. It was meant to be like a punitive expedition. So they just want they just want to teach the Sultan a lesson, saying, you need to obey us and honor your treaty. If you sign an amity and friendship treaty, you can't fire on our ships. So they try using this route. Brooke himself operates a little bit independently. So he's got two different roles at this point. He's an agent of the British Empire, but he's also the Raja of his own country.
Yeah.
Kind of under Brunei.
Yeah.
And I say kind of because at the time, the agreement with Raja Muda Hashim was he was going to basically rule his own country. That's why you start hearing the name Raja only around 1845.
Oh.
So when people say Brooke was made Raja of Sarawak in 1841,
No.
not really.
Oh.
He was actually kind of addressed as the Tuan Besar, so he's just the kind of the great lord, and especially he was not the Raja at all because he referred to Raja Muda Hashim as the Raja of Sarawak until at least when he takes him into Brunei. So I think the real point where he kind of starts warming up to the title of Raja of Sarawak is after the departure of Raja Muda Hashim in his entry into Brunei. Then that makes Brooke the top authority of the Sarawak River, and that's when he starts accepting the title of Raja of Sarawak.
No, but then essentially Brooke gets what he wants, doesn't he?
Yeah,
Gets what he wants.
Because what he ends up doing is, because the Sultan is so weak, he's ready to sign any. Brooke forces him to sign an apology letter to the Queen.
For taking the ships.
Yeah, for the trouble he caused.
Yeah.
So that's one letter he wrote. So James was upgraded to become a full diplomatic officer for the Foreign Office. Basically, he became a consul for Borneo. And this allowed him to become the negotiator for a new treaty in Borneo itself. So this is when he clears up a lot of the rougher details. And so with this in place, this new commerce, this is called the Treaty of Commerce in Brunei. What's it called? It's a commerce treaty, basically. Okay. It's taking care of a lot of the finer details of how they'll treat English ships when they arrive, and how they'll treat Bruneian ships, and the division between Labuan and which island belongs to who. So because there's many islands in between. So after this is his final task that James takes care of before he returns to England for the first time since he left in December 1838.
Wow.
So he was almost in the Southeast Asia for a decade before he goes back. So when he goes back to England, by this time, there's a famous book called what is it called? I only refer to it as the Dido book, HMS Dido.
Yeah, Dido.
Yeah, Dido. I don't even. You see, that one I've only read as well. What the hell's the book called? It's got one of those silly. Those absolutely crazy 19th century titles. It goes on for like 3 sentences. It's not narrative. Narrative the Celebes is Mundy's book.
Isn't it just called HMS Dido?
Oh no.
Okay.
It is. It's like,
different name.
It's like 2 sentences long.
Okay.
Expedition to Borneo in the HMS Dido for the suppression of piracy in the Batang Lupur.
Let's call it the Dido book.
It's what it's called. But I got to double check that last part. Got to start giving accurate facts. Otherwise, when people say I'm just making it up. Expedition to Borneo of HMS Dido for the suppression of piracy with extracts from the journal of James Brooke, Esquire of Sarawak. Oh, wow. Okay, I should have left it open.
Just read it when you have time.
Okay. So, if you know James Brooke's full story, there's a lot more to the story than just the formation of Sarawak, the capture of Brunei, and the cession of Labuan. He's also doing punitive expeditions within Sarawak itself. And his earlier ally in the Royal Navy was a captain called Captain Henry Keppel. So Captain Henry Keppel, around the time of the capture of Brunei, actually had already released his own book of James Brooke's adventures. And so it's called the Expedition to Borneo of HMS Dido for the suppression of piracy with extracts from James Brooke, Esquire of Esquire. Or with extracts from the journal of James Brooke, Esquire of Sarawak.
I'm going to put that at the bottom. It's going to be so long.
Yes. By Henry Keppel, yes. So the point is he had released this book that was filled with adventure in the Southeast Asia, in Borneo, with the headhunters and fighting pirates. Again, we have a definition problem of what a pirate is, but it was actually it became quite popular and it made James quite the hero in England itself, especially after the capture of Brunei. because there were big events, and at the same time, in England, the British Empire wasn't doing very well. They were having troubles in New Zealand. They were having troubles a lot of places.
Oh,
so
okay.
so when they had a victory, they like to
Spread the news.
celebrate it. Yeah. So James Brooke is pretty hot off the release of this book and returns to England with the new announcement of a colony going to be formed at Labuan. They haven't assigned a governor yet. So when James Brooke arrives back in England, they formally announce that James Brooke will become the governor of Labuan. So he finally has achieved his earlier dream of becoming a British governor. It just isn't of Sarawak. It's of the governor of Labuan. So that's kind of the plan B approach to become a governor. And that's kind of how Labuan got sucked into the story of becoming a part of the British Empire because of his own personal desire to become a governor.
For the British. That's kind of not underwhelming, but like, what? It was a very long business play.
Yeah, it worked.
Yeah.
And as soon as he got the governorship, at the very same time, Henry Wise, who was his business partner, had his own kind of little bankruptcy problem. He was invested with another company, and at the same time, Henry Wise's involvement with with Sarawak itself, because he was invested in the Sarawak antimony business. That whole business kind of just fell apart, and then when this business fell apart, Brooke actually fell away from Henry Wise.
Oh, distance himself.
So Henry Wise had done everything possible to get James Brooke exactly what he wanted. He wanted to become a governor. And so he manages to become a governor, but at the same time, the relationship fell apart entirely. So he became governor at a time when he's writing to Henry Brooke, I no longer wish to work with you. And then he's letting everybody know that they're no longer working together.
Oh, wow.
So this sets up the whole rivalry, which happens later on, between the coal mining, which becomes part of a later story.
Yeah.
Oh, but I guess I should say, wow, it's so out of place. The big coal seam in Labuan itself
Yes.
was discovered in 1847. So they had acquired the island first because they wanted it to. Well, James wanted to become governor. That was his motive. Henry Wise wanted to invest in the area and form a coal company next to a British colony because that offers British protection. Brunei wanted British protection as well. Well, kind of. At this point, they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. The British were coming in whether you liked it or not. So you had that part, and then. So everyone had their own motivations. That's the hard part when you talk about with history is everybody has their own motivations, and you can't write a single narrative. Everyone has their own
storyline.
I want this, he wants that, they want this, and if you take it from one approach, you're not going to get the whole history. So the interesting part is when he becomes governor and comes back to the island. This is when they start forming the island itself, the administrative structure, the buildings, everything like that. And one of the interesting things I found, because I've been diving through the documents, is that when he was building the first buildings in Labuan, interestingly enough, his greatest diplomatic rival from way early in his career, Indira Makota, was actually on Labuan himself, organizing labor to help build the Labuan buildings. So even Makota himself is not an evil mastermind. He's just out there trying to make money. So you have that, and at the same time, another really crazy discovery I made was at James Brooke, when he arrives on the island, he goes over to Brunei, and he's specifically asked them to write out a receipt, because what he did was he actually ended up paying the Brunei officials for the cession of Labuan. So what was commonly said is that Brunei cedes Labuan for no payment. But this isn't actually true. What happens is James Brooke is specifically because everything has to be written down and accounted for, and this money is coming from the British government to Brunei specifically for the cession of Labuan. So he has to get an official receipt. So these official receipts show up in the Foreign Archive. So what you see 3 different people getting paid off. The Sultan, of course. The Sultan is paid $2,800. Then the second in line, the next Sultan, the Bendahara, the Abdul Mumin, he is paid $1,000.
$1,000.
And then, interestingly, a relative of Muda Hashim, who survived the attack, 4 brothers survived the attack. One of them was called Muda Muhammad, and he was paid $1,000 as well. So what it is, it's 4,800.
Yes.
I can do math in my head. 4,800 Spanish dollars, because that was the currency that was used in this area. Yeah. So that's what was paid for the cession of Labuan. So it seems to be a one-off fee because I can't find any other annual payments. So I'm not sure. I don't think it's in the 1847 Commerce Agreement either.
The initial one you mentioned earlier was supposed to be 7,000, was it?
Well, that was a lifetime fee for all of Sarawak.
Oh, that was Sarawak. Sorry.
So that's kind of the conflict that James Brooke has. Is he's kind of half on his own, half with the British government. So when his feet are on Labuan, he's the governor of Labuan. When he's outside Labuan and Sarawak, he's the Raja of Sarawak. So one time he's a British governor, another time he's an independent Raja. So they can't decide whether he's British, not British, whether a British person can even become a Raja, whether a Raja should have to pay taxes in England. There are all these sort of crazy stories, problems which come up with this. So this is part of the conflict. Is when at this point forward, when James Brooke calls for naval aid, is he calling as the governor of Labuan, or is he calling as the Raja of Sarawak? Because this immediately leads up to a point where Brunei is not actually happy with Britain at all. There's some evidence that they actually start up more trouble in the neighboring territories besides Sarawak proper. So what happens is they start causing trouble in the Sedang and the Batang Lupar areas. So this is again leads up to the. It's interesting when you read the letters. In March of 1849, James Brooke almost sounds desperate because basically there's so much chaos happening in the river next door. He's writing to the Admiralty, he's writing to his political friends, he's writing everybody saying, "I need help, I need help, I need help." Because a new admiral had come in to replace Cochrane, and this new admiral was not supportive of James Brooke.
Yeah.
He had like 7 ships, and for the China station. The China station is literally everything from Singapore to China to Australia. So 7 ships spread out over all this gigantic territory.
Yeah.
And then you have James Brooke, who's now proudly the new governor of Labuan, saying, "I've got power. I'm going to call ships."
And none of them.
And then he's saying, "No, you're not." So this is when James gets desperate and he starts writing everybody he knows. And he actually does get some success and gets return of some ships. And that's when you have the Battle of Beting Maru. So if you're talking about the big massacres that happen, this is kind of a result of what happens. Even in a story, this is the biggest massacre they talk about. So it's a very large sea battle where they have the Nemesis steamship involved, and then the Royalist, another ship, not James's Royalist, another Royalist. And then this is when they make the very large prize money claim, because of there was a law passed where against slavery, every time you transport slaves, you can get your ship captured and be called a pirate. So what happens is if you end up capturing a ship
With slaves? With capturing a ship?
Well, if you ever capture a ship of pirates, then you're paid per pirate. Of either you destroy their ship, and you get money per head that was on the ship, or if you actually kill a pirate, then you get a different amount. And this is so after this, you have this big massacre nighttime battle between steamships, rocket launchers against a bala of it's mixed, by the way, Malays and Iban. A bala, they call it, a fleet of bala of ships.
Yeah.
They had previously raided some towns up north, Daro and Palo, and so they were legitimately causing trouble. So it's not like they created a fiction. They were actually returning from their own expedition with slaves on board, and at the same time they got ambushed by the Royal Navy forces. So, but the controversy comes at a point where because at a certain point the Iban have to just abandon their ships and run into the jungle. So what happened is all they do is count up the number of places on the ships and said, okay, this is how many pirates have been stopped. And so they say assumed killed, and that's how they base the numbers off. And these long Dayak boats can hold up to 50, 60, 80 people in one single boat. So the initial amount that he gets, that they claim for head money is based on about almost 500 to 1,000 dead.
Dang.
Yeah. So this creates a large bill, and then causes all the next stuff.
What was the economy of Labuan once they take over?
It's kind of the problem with Labuan, isn't it? If we get back to the Labuan story itself, Labuan killed almost everybody who stepped foot on the island. They called it Labuan fever. So it had a very nasty reputation for just killing people. And even every time Brooke went to the island, he got so sick that he had to return home. So it was never actually a good place to do business. They found coal, but the coal wasn't the best coal. Like it wasn't.
Wasn't a significant amount of coal?
Well, there was coal, but it was cost a lot of money to dig it up, transport it out, and the quality of the coal itself isn't high quality coal. So and there really was no reason to have a coaling station at Labuan, even though they argued there was. All the Chamber of Commerce's who argued that they wanted to open up businesses in Labuan didn't really. They tried. Some tried, but they all failed because their biggest trading partner is Brunei. So if Brunei is weak, then their trading will be weak, and so it never actually did catch on. So what happened is they initially start big with lots of expenses, and it's just cost cutting, until it just kind of evaporates into what you see when your relative comes there.
1868. Yeah. So there's a lot of transitions, one company after another, and they go through a series of different companies taking over the coal industry and the coal business, and they all relatively give up, generally, and it's just an industry that's just not profitable and not viable as a business. Yeah. And then you get sort of to the early 1900s, and when does the coal industry sort of come to an end?
It's right about that time. Right around the early 1900s is when the biggest decision is when the Royal Navy decides to switch from coal to diesel, to oil. So this is kind of the death knell for all coal. Is that moment in time.